Today our team will present our current findings and what we plan to achieve in our final report in response to gaining a better understanding of social marketing strategies. My name is Terry, and on our team we have Max, Joanna, Brock and Cameron. The agenda of the presentation is as follows. I will be covering our aims for the project, which contains the managerial decision problem, marketing research problem and research questions. I will then look into some key demographics of the data. Max will then look into some sample deficiencies and his current findings. Joanna, Brock and Cameron will explore their current findings and plans for the final report respective to their market research questions. Healthy eating and obesity are two extremely prominent health issues in Australian society, with 63% of Australian adults in 2016 being classified as overweight or obese. In response to this alarming trend, our intentions for this report are to help organisations understand how various types of advertisements work with different segments of the population. Ultimately, we want the findings of our analysis to be vital in assisting the social policy maker make informed future decisions. For the final report, our managerial decision problem is how we can assist the social policy maker in developing informed social marketing decisions for the future. Our market research problem is to explore what kind of advertisements seem to work better with certain segments of the population. To gain a better understanding of our managerial decision problem and market research problem, our team has set 4 research questions for the report. The first question is whether or not consumer evaluations for each advertisement differ between each advertisement. The second question explores whether there is difference in ad evaluations based on demographics, looking more specifically at race and gender. Our third question looks at the relationship between food preferences and perception or behaviour. And the final question will involve an investigation into whether a valid regression model can be established for the sample. Looking at the basic demographics of the data, there were a total of 727 responses collected, with incomplete surveys being deleted from the dataset. Extreme outliers were identified and will be discussed further by Max. In terms of gender, 57% were female respondents and 43% were male respondents. In terms of race, almost 70% of respondents were Asian and 22% of respondents were Caucasian, with these two categories dominating the dataset reflecting 92% of the sample. This skew in the data may not reflect the population and was taken into account when conducting analysis of the sample. I will now pass on to Max.
Before we address any of the research questions and methodology that will be used to analyse them, it is important to briefly discuss the major deficiencies that come across in the data. The main deficiency with the data is the lack of random sampling. This stems from the way in which the survey was distributed to uni students of a similar age. This is shown in the skewness on the age in the dataset. Other deficiencies include extreme outliers and cases in demographics of respondents, such as height and age, along with the time in which the survey was completed. These outliers were removed from the dataset accordingly. As Terry previously mentioned, our first research question involved attempting to answer whether the consumer's evaluations for each advertisement differ between each ad. This involved trying to find what evaluations were similar and what evaluations were different. This question is important because it is useful to discover which advertisements yield the best responses and effectiveness from consumers. In terms of the data that is needed to analyse this question, each ad number, along with the 6 ad evaluations by consumers, are needed. This includes the ad is effective, the ad is informational, the ad is positive, the ad is cheery, and the ad makes me think, and the ad message is clear. This data will assist in proving whether the consumer's responses for the 6 evaluations differ between each advertisement. In order to start the basic analysis for this question, we constructed an analysis of the mean responses. Using the descriptive statistics of means, we developed the 2 charts that can be seen on the presentation. This was utilised in order to gain a base understanding of consumers' responses in the evaluations for each ad, and here it can clearly see that advertisement 3 was a clear performer in all 6 ad evaluations. However, in order to statistically prove the rankings and inferences found from the basic analysis of the means responses, a series of one-way ANOVA tests were run. A one-way ANOVA test is most suited to try and answer this research question that we have proposed. By analysing the variances of the specific evaluations, it can determine whether the means of each ad statistically differ at the 95% confidence level. Hence, this ANOVA analysis will assist in statistically backing up the assertions and findings that have been found formally in this central mean analysis. I will now pass on to Joe, who's going to address our second research question.
Given what Max has just explained, the aim of the second research question is to determine if there is a difference in ad evaluations based on demographics. This delves deeper into the first research question, which looks at the differing ad evaluations for each advertisement. It seeks to examine whether demographical factors are significant in shaping the way respondents evaluated the 5 advertisements. Demographics are important for companies to consider when targeting campaigns, and need to be factored in this case to test if demographics influence ad evaluations. The way this will be done is by running tests for 2 important demographics within the sample, both sex and race, in order to compare the impact these demographics have on ad evaluations for each advertisement. Separate tests will be run for all 3 advertisements groups we have established. We have grouped advertisements 1 and 2 as they both use scare tactics, and advertisements 3 and 4 as they both have more informative information about health and nutrition. Advertisement 5 stands alone. It is not related to healthy eating and acts more of a control. In order to test whether race affects ad evaluations, we plan to run a correlation test to see if a linear relationship exists between race and all 6 evaluations. 3 separate tests will be run for the 3 advertising groups in order to compare evaluations between 3 ads and determine if certain ads yield higher evaluations amongst certain races. We also plan to use one-way ANOVA tests to further explore the differences in relationships between the races, using post-hoc tests to determine if any races are significantly different. Similarly, we plan to run the same kind of test when testing sex to test if it causes differences in ad evaluations. 3 correlation tests will be used to see if there is a relationship between these 2 groups. If a difference is found, we will implement an independent t-test to explore if this relationship between the 2 groups is significant. Ultimately, what these tests aim to do is to help management in understanding whether certain advertisements seem to resonate stronger with certain demographics. This will enable management to make well-informed decisions about whether to target certain advertisements to specific demographics. For example, if we found that Asians have a stronger ad evaluations of advertisements 1 and 2, we would suggest that management invest in targeting these ads to Asian, in order to ensure message awareness is as strong as possible. In doing this, marketing campaigns will be effective and efficient in spreading information to demographic groups.
Another of the key research questions we aim to target is what is the effect of taste ratings on the perception and behaviour of different groups in the population. The importance of this question stems from research that suggests greater change or call to action occurs when an individual has a stronger connection to a stimulus. In terms of the data used to analyse this research question, multiple groups have been selected to make comparisons with. This includes males and females, dieters and non-dieters, those who pay attention to health advertisements, which has been split into 5 groups, being very low, low, medium, high, and very high, and also English as a first language against those who do not have English as a first language, and also race. However, the results from race are not reliable due to the number of people in some of the subgroups being too low to draw statistical significance. All these groups were tested on importance and likelihood to change their taste preferences in the survey, which asked participants to rate from 1 to 5 their evaluation and how they feel about the taste of certain products. The tests that we plan to use to address this research question include a correlational computation of the products being rated. This has managerial importance due to if we are able to find a significant linear relationship in the data, we can move into predicting how the population's behaviour and perceptions may change due to an influence on one or more of the scores. Secondly, we will use one-way ANOVAs, independent samples t-tests, and repeated measures ANOVAs and t-tests, depending on the levels in the groups we are analysing. The reasoning for using a one-way ANOVA and an independent t-test is to determine the importance of individual attributes, such as the taste ratings for specific foods across the groups. This allows us to answer the managerial question of what attributes are most important to particular groups. The repeated measures ANOVA and t-tests target a different style of question, such as which attribute stands out when compared to each other for one group of people. This is a valuable managerial question to answer also, as it allows for distinguishing how much more effective one attribute is at inducing change compared to the other attributes. So what the main aim to achieve in the final report is going to be, can we model and predict the type of advertising that is most effective for segments in the population? By combining the analyses of taste preferences, diet choices, and ad evaluation, we believe that we can recommend the perfect ad that will statistically be most effective for the population. I'll pass on to Cameron to continue.
Now that Max, Joe, and Brock have discussed the logic in their own methodology, we wanted to investigate whether we can fit a valid regression model to these results. The purpose of this is to group all the previous findings into more wide-reaching, implicative statistical analysis. Regression models would be suitable in doing this because they create predictive assertions about the wider population that managers and marketers alike could benefit from. Given that we've already established ad response trends concerning aspects of our sample, it follows suit that we would attempt to group these trends together and create some form of meaningful inference. As to the method of our regression analysis, we grouped ads 1 and 2, 3 and 4, and 5 into separate categories for analysis. This was done because each of these ad categories have different intentions, objectives, and presentation styles, such that analysing them in one model could be done, but we wanted to minimise the degrees of freedom penalty that would occur. The explanatory component of the equation represented the demographics of the sample, and this was fixed across the analysis for all ad categories, as you can see here overlaid on the presentation. This explanatory component included a mix of scale variables and a dummy indicators to explain any level shifts in the data given the indicator was in effect, i.e. it was equal to 1 or not. This fixed explanatory component was constructed so independent variable effects could be compared across advertisements if necessary, as long as the dependent variable under analysis was the same and if the independent variables in both analyses were statistically significant. As to the dependent variables in each of these regression models, each evaluation for each ad category was regressed on this fixed set of independent variables, though unfortunately the number of significant predictors per dependent variable were extremely limited and quite varied. We argue that because these nominal ad evaluations took on a 7-point Likert scale, they would be suitable to be treated as continuous and thus suitable for the use as dependent variables. What you see on screen now is a depiction of our complete models and how they moved, depending on ad category and the ad evaluation under analysis. This visual representation should make things a lot clearer. The particular reason for why we wanted to investigate predictive relationships between these ad evaluations and demographics of the sample was to address the market research problem as a whole. When our results show that different segments of the population do not necessarily respond differently to the advertisements, i.e. their evaluations are not significantly different, this has quite profound implications for social marketers. However, the degree of similarity between advertisements, as well as non-random sample limitations, constrain the implications of these results and indicate that further testing is needed.